These days, baseball is ruled by a solemn army of laptop-wielding spreadsheet gurus.
I never realized how boring this game is.
But in its glorious heyday, America's national pastime was a seedy hotbed of wife-swapping, crack-smoking, and knife-wielding drunkards.
You do not wish this on your worst enemy. Look at this. Bang! Right there. Left nut, right nut. You can't get more square than this.
From hijacking planes to wrestling alligators, this is the story of baseball's seedy century. Welcome back to The Upshot. I'm Jack. Zach is here, as always.
Hello, mate.
Hello. And struggling to grip his crack pipe with his giant catching mitt, it's Josh Kaplan.
Hello, lads. How are we doing?
Hello. Welcome back. Returning guest.
Happy to be here.
Very much specialising in the American sports.
Yeah. Sort of like stateside wrong-uns is where I'd say my passions lie.
So we had you for NFL. Mm-hmm. We're doing baseball this time. I should sort of explain the concept of this episode. We're doing the sort of the seedy century of baseball, which I have arbitrarily chosen as 1880 to 1989.
Yeah.
Don't ask me why. It's just for editorial reasons.
Not because we're stretching this out into another episode of modern baseball.
Yeah, it means we can do a modern
next
episode
year
at some point. But also it does kind of capture the era before, fucking Moneyball changed it all.
When men were men.
Yeah. Well, quite. You're a fan, aren't you, Josh?
Yeah, a bit of a baseball fan. I lived in LA. I used to be a fan of the Dodgers. I lived in New York. I sort of carried that on in quite a cringe way. I was one of the nonces that went to the London MLB series this year with the Mets and the Phillies.
Lovely. How was it?
Yeah, I mean, it's an experience to see a lot of kind of, I don't know, nonce type folks out and about. Paying just stupid money for like tat. There was a like 25 quid beer bat, which is just a big bat that you put some beer in.
To be
25 quid.
Would quite like to own that.
Yeah, it's a cool like all American tat. It's a cool souvenir.
Yeah. Is it glass? No, it's like
it's plastic.
Hard plastic.
What do you do with that? Do you drink out of it at home, or is it just more of a sort of?
I think it's just some crap you put in a room. Yeah.
It would be cool in the studio actually. Might look into it.
Didn't you say that it didn't come with beer?
No, so the 25 quid is just the bat,
instead.
and then you have to pay another 14 quid for the 2 pints to fill it. Not the best value for money.
Maybe those blokes are just filling it with their own
Piss.
squash. Mountain Dew or something. Because they are the British fans of baseball and really all American sports. They're of a type, aren't they?
Yeah, not to be crude about it, but they're not normal people. I don't think, you're often up quite late. I think I went to an NFL London series once, and there was a lot of like, the way I would describe it is blokes from the Midlands who wear like camo style NFL jerseys and just a bit too into it. And it's just like, I don't know, mate, you're from Wolverhampton.
Yeah.
Why do you care who the like Miami Dolphins running back is?
A lot of beards and vapes.
Yeah. Big, the big fucking, the box face.
Big vape that does loads of smoke.
Big clouds. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great type. I guess, basically the theme of this episode is that nowadays baseball, it's got quite serious.
Yeah.
Moneyball, great film, but it sort of heralded that age of data taking over.
Yeah, it's probably like the most nerdy sport. I mean, I think if you go to like a regular season, like Mets game or whatever, you basically see these like old Larry David style gentlemen sitting in the stands, filling out the box scores and like marking down all the different stats. And there's loads of like really complicated acronyms and weird things, and they'll just make up new ones all the time, and they'll be like, oh well, his OBS is 0.34, and you're like, that is shit.
It's kind of
really
it's kind of XG nerds.
yeah it's like the original XG
but you
nerds.
still get, there are still some characters, right? Like we were talking about Bartolo Colon, the Mets pitcher. I think he's retired now, but he played up to the age of 45.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of the sort of like fun stuff about baseball comes from the fact that it's like huge in Latin America, and you get some like really like fiery characters.
Yeah, because he's Dominican. I was reading up on him, so he's 20 stone.
Yeah.
And known as Big Sexy. And he basically, it turned out that he had a secret family, and the mother of these children, of his love children, sued him for child support because he was basically being a deadbeat dad. And he would have got away with it because the court case was sealed. It was all anonymous. But he decided that he would defend himself in court. So he got named as one of the attorneys on the case.
Yeah.
And all the sports press were like, hang on, why is Bartolo Colon representing a divorcing dad? And then realised it. And I think that's how his wife found out.
I think it's one of those sports where like the games are 4 hours long, and like if you're like a relief pitcher, you're playing maybe like 20 minutes of that. So you've got a lot of time to dick around, effectively. Probably a lot of time to shag around.
Yeah, but then surely he's playing like high level baseball. He's got 2 families, and now he's taking on another role as a lawyer. surely just get someone else to do that. You've got enough money.
But we always say this with second families. How can you be arsed? You know, like you hear about those real life stories where the guy's like got a secret family in Thailand, and he's going back and forth, and you just think like, how can you be arsed?
A lot of admin.
As an uninitiated baseball fan, when you're talking about all these stats, for me, baseball is I said this before, glorified rounders. Yeah, and surely you're just like you just hit it.
Zach is motioning to hit in the style of rounders, one-handed, upright.
The best way I can describe that is the way I treat cricket, which is like you have these very serious people that are very into it, and I just go up to them and say, in a 5-day test, why don't you just try and hit a 6 every time? Like, I think they're always trying to, they are just trying to always hit it, but like there's levels of it. It's just like, it's like cricket. It's just American cricket.
Okay, so there are tactics in terms of whether you try to get to
and like whether you get
home run or
base,
hit like first base.
Is that a genuine question?
Yeah, it's a genuine question.
If there are any American listeners listening, apologies. I presume this is how you are feeling what we feel when you hear a guy being like, that's a goddamn PK! We give Americans a lot of shit for it, and we are now doing it. Anyway, there's not going to be much baseball in this episode. There's just going to be alligator wrestling and crack and drinking and sex. Should we get into it?
Let's do it.
I'm going to take us all the way back to the early years of professional baseball, the 1890s. So the sport is sort of 20 years old at this point as a professional thing. But really, it's very different times. So just by way of example, the Oakland Athletics had a mascot who was a child with a hunchback. And as the players ran out to bat, they would rub his hump for luck. So
it wasn't a costume. It was just a deformed child.
It was his life. I was looking, and there was a news report like a couple of decades later, looking back on the time that they had this hunchback mascot. And the article in the news says, the players would rub his hump on the way to the plate, and it seemed to do their batting averages a lot of good. The mascot later became a bootlegger and was recently shot to death in some kind of brawl.
Oh, dear. It's the perils of being a child star, isn't it?
Difficult second act. A bootlegger. So that's like 1910s, isn't it, when booze was illegal?
Yeah, just running booze across the border.
It's such a funny era, particularly in America. The story, like we did an episode on marathons, and the stories from that era, they're all like sniffing ether.
Him and the Elephant Man flogging like rat poison cocktails to marathon runners.
Anyway, also on that Oakland A's team in the 1890s was possibly the most eccentric player in Major League Baseball history, Rube Waddell.
Great names from that.
Yeah, the names are amazing. There are some good names in this episode, actually. But Rube is considered one of the 100 best players ever, but also a very simple man. He became a star pitcher thanks to his childhood, where apparently all he did was he just threw rocks at birds. He just got really fucking accurate. But he was also a big boozer. So apparently he would regularly play drunk. He once passed out on the pitching mound while about to throw, which could be fun, could be quite sad. We'll call it fun. And apparently opposition fans realised that he was quite easily distracted. So mid-game, apparently he was regularly distracted by shiny objects and puppies. So like there was a puppy in the crowd, he would just like drop the ball and walk over. And everyone would be like, what are you doing? Sometimes they heckled him as well. So here's a match report from an American newspaper at the time. It says, a wag in the grandstand yelled, "Say there, Rube, how are the folks at home? And do they comb their hair with a curry comb down in Pensy yet?"
It's a very polite heckle, isn't it?
Well, that is the equivalent of being like, "You fucking cunt now." I had to look it up. A curry comb is for horses. So I think they're being like, your parents are animals.
Big horsey hair.
Anyway, it says, Rube excused himself, walked over to the stand and soaked the wag in the face with a stiff right. He returned to the pitcher's rubber, excused himself again, and struck out Perry Worden.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay, this isn't wag in the modern sense.
No, not a wife and girlfriend.
First listen,
He didn't punch a wife.
Means it in the sort of like rapscallion sense.
Yeah, you wag. Yeah, so the man who tried to tame Rube was his long-suffering coach at the Oakland A's, Connie Mack. So Connie Mack thought he could change him. Apparently, Rube was so bad with money that Mack made sure he was paid in single dollar bills in the hope it would last longer. On one occasion, Rube got into this really bad bar fight, and he was out of control all season. And Connie was like, right, that's it. I'm going to teach him a lesson. So he was friends with like the local police chief. He was friends with judges. So he basically arranged with the local police chief to arrest Rube for attempted murder. And then the coach arranged with a local judge friend to hold a fake court case for attempted murder, in which he also paid an actor to come in covered in bandages, pretending to be the victim. Anyway, so the judge then calls him in and is like, look, it's looking bad for you. Apparently they hold this court case for like days.
So much time for capers back in the day.
What is this judge up to? Anyway, the judge tells him, you're looking at 5 years in jail, at which point Rube starts crying, he's panicked, and then the judge says, okay, I'm going to give you one last chance. You got to stop drinking or I'm sending you to jail. And apparently it works for a whole season. He's just not drinking. And Connie Mack's like, yeah, great, brilliant, this worked. And then one night he's in his hotel room, Connie, the coach, when there's a knock on his door at 1 a.m. and he opens the door and Rube Waddell there is just standing really drunk, holding out, offering him a sandwich of Limburger cheese and stale onions called a pizzazza. Apparently at that point he's like, it's over.
He's off the rails again.
Yeah, anyway, so that was near the end of the season apparently. And so the season ends and Rube then disappears. Rube goes on a big drunken bender, disappears for months and no one knows where he is. And eventually he returns for the new season and reveals that he's been wrestling alligators in a circus.
Just for fun.
Yeah.
He sounds great.
Yeah, there's something very, what is that era called? Is that, I guess you'd call it like Georgian here.
Yeah.
Prohibition era America, isn't it? The names, the capers, as you said. Yeah.
A lot of thick men, just like very beefy blokes doing weird shit.
Yeah, it's like circus adjacent.
Yeah.
Hunchbacks and alligators.
Yeah, freak shows and circuses and,
Different standards of morality in those days.
But a great player. One of the 100 greatest ever. It's a bit like with cricket, they would say W.G. Grace was one of the best ever, but like, it's a different sport. Then,
Well, I think a lot of them back then were like just really, really fat. Like baseball's kind of a fat sport anyway, because you don't need a massively high level of fitness to.
What if you're a batter? Are you skinnier because you got to run?
Yeah, because I mean, pitchers they can be fatter because they're just standing in a spot throwing. But like sometimes, like I can't remember if it's either the National League or the American League, you don't even have to run. You can bat and then someone just does the running for you. Yeah.
Is that what a designated hitter is?
Yeah.
That's as technical as we're going to get today. Yeah. It's weird. Pitchers are like sort of the more fun characters, aren't they?
Yeah, because they
Powers.
Get to have a bit more of a person. Because they're like the only ones that are really like known other than like the big hitters.
However, speaking of big hitters, he's a character for you.
Yeah, I was going to say the next one very much matches that stereotype. So Babe Ruth is often called one of the greatest players of all time. So he played for Boston Red Sox and the New York Yankees from 1914 to 1935. And he was like seriously good. He hit a record 60 home runs in a season. He also hit 714 career home runs, which was a record that stood until the 70s.
Also, isn't the 70s is when they're all on steroids, so a lot of people say the record is still sound.
Okay. This American news channel a few years ago did a rundown of the greatest athletes of all time, and Babe Ruth was number 3, behind Michael Jordan and Muhammad Ali, and just ahead of Tom Brady and Serena Williams. It's possibly because they think sport only exists in America.
I don't think many European sports fans are putting Babe Ruth.
Babe Ruth is definitely not.
Even Tom Brady.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure if the standards for a great athlete were quite the same in the 1920s. So this is Babe Ruth's daily diet. So his breakfast was a porterhouse steak, potatoes, a quart of bourbon, ginger ale, and an 18-egg omelette. Snack number 1, which I'm guessing is sort of 10:30, 11, he'd have 2 hot dogs and 2 Coca-Colas. Lunch was then 2 raw steaks, 2 orders of potatoes, 1 lettuce head with Roquefort dressing.
Delicious.
You think that's the vegetables with Roquefort dressing.
Then snack number 2, mid-afternoon, another 2 hot dogs, another 2 Coca-Colas.
And do you think the Coca-Cola had cocaine in it in this?
Oh,
stuff?
yeah.
Probably did.
Yeah.
Is that when it did?
Didn't they used to have?
Do you want to libel the Coca-Cola
Chuck
Corporation?
that in the fucking mix.
Isn't the traditional recipe is with whipped cream on top as well, isn't it?
Really? What, and cocaine?
And cocaine.
The cream's the problem.
Dinner was then 2 porterhouse steaks raw, 2 lettuce heads with roquefort, 2 cottage fried potatoes, 2 orders of apple pie, and then his after dinner snack was chocolate ice cream and pickled eels.
Delicious.
hopefully not together.
Yeah, wasn't expecting the eels.
Yeah, it took a bit of a sort of Eastern turn.
Yeah, it was all very American to that.
Yeah.
point.
He also apparently had a phase of injecting testosterone from sheep's testicles into him.
That's part of a balanced diet.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Doesn't that Brian Johnson fucker probably gets into a bit of that, doesn't he? You know, the guy's trying to live forever.
Yeah. Dude, he's definitely doing some injectables.
Yeah, this week he had all his blood plasma removed and replaced with some like chemical.
Yeah, I think actually, considering he's spending like $1 million on it, he looks terrible.
Yeah, he looks creepy, like a
Yeah.
like AI robot-y future. Someone tweeted the other day being like, how funny would it be if this guy just got hit by a bus?
And that's all because he didn't eat his lettuce with roquefort cheese.
Spent his kid's entire inheritance on removing his plasma. I'm not a doctor, but surely plasma is quite key.
Nah, he's got this chemical instead.
Yeah, he's got better plasma actually. If anything.
Back to Babe Ruth. So there's a story of him collapsing during training one time and being carted off to hospital, and the doctors blamed it on him binging on hot dogs and soda pop before training.
Wow, that's part of his twice daily snacks.
Yeah. And actually his unsavory habits weren't confined to raw steaks and pickled eels. So he was also an absolutely relentless boozer.
Well, I kind of guessed that by the starting his day with a quart of whiskey.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that. Weirdly, the only drink.
Yeah, I think they probably didn't bother writing it down. It was just sort of constantly sipping.
Yeah. Have you ever read Hunter S. Thompson?
Yeah.
His equivalent of this.
Yeah.
And it's like, he wakes up at like 11 and it's like rum with eggs, cocaine. And then like every sort of 25 minutes, it's just cocaine.
And then the writing started at like 3 a.m.
Yeah, for an hour.
Yeah. According to Babe Ruth's biography, despite being married for virtually all of his career, he also was a major league shagger and had a particularly voracious appetite for escorts. So apparently he'd go to brothels and his signature request was to sleep with all the girls in one night.
How many is that, ballpark?
Yeah.
On your last visit to a brothel,
I don't know. Well, I mean, the mega brothel in Cologne.
Usually I find.
Probably more than 5, less than 10.
Yeah, it feels about right, doesn't it? Yeah.
Those days, yeah.
More than that, you got a lot of overheads.
Yeah.
That's a lot in one night.
This lifestyle naturally almost killed him. So he once missed half a season after contracting syphilis. There was another time some newspaper reporters were on a train with him, like following the team around, and he emerged in the middle of the night being chased down the carriage by a knife-wielding mistress who apparently she thought that she was the only one, and
that's always the way,
discovered, I hate to break it to you, but you're not.
Is that like a train where you sleep on it and stuff, and they've been like sort of, I don't know, she caught him in bed with another woman or something?
Quite funny if he brought sort of like a carriage of whores on the train with him.
Yeah, don't go in that room. Don't go in that carriage. That's first class. Yeah, again, that image is quite sort of cartoons from that era of being chased down. If it was a rolling pin instead of a knife.
Yeah, it's quite like a Tom and Jerry episode.
Yeah. Tom and Jerry After Dark.
There was another story of him being chased out of a hotel by a guy with a gun who discovered him in bed with his wife.
Yeah.
Which is also quite
amazing.
on brand.
To get a shot.
Yeah. So I think at some point after, these stories kept on happening and the Yankees decided to hire a private detective to follow him around, and they came back after one night and reported that he'd shagged 6 different women in one night.
Oh, so there's the number. Okay, good to know.
Yeah.
More than 5 lessons.
In case you're wondering how far that lifestyle got him, he died at 53.
Really? That's so surprising.
I'm actually surprised he got that far.
Yeah.
Apparently he also at a party once jumped on top of the piano and shouted, "Okay, girls, anyone who doesn't want to get fucked right now can leave." That is the way to clear a room. Who's staying in that scenario?
Yeah.
That's like my granddad's way of. My dad used to have like parties at home or like in his bedroom, I guess, in the family home. My granddad's way of clearing it was he would just go completely naked up into the room. My dad was a teenager, just walk in naked and be like, "All right, I think it's time for everyone to leave," and everyone would be like, "All right." You're probably worried where that story was going. My granddad used to jump on the piano and go, "Right, anyone doesn't want to get fucked." Yeah. So of sort of like people who are sporting greats, like I'm probably not putting him as number 3 greatest ever, because I don't know baseball that well, but most wildlife
seems up there in terms of like shagging. I would say that's pretty sort of like Hall of Fame levels.
Like Michael Jordan's got enough for us to do an episode on him, but he's not anywhere in that league. I guess Shane Warne still not posting numbers like that. Do you understand what question I'm asking?
Yeah.
Is he what? Top
of the
top
greats?
shaggers?
Is he the most unruly? Biggest wrong of the sort of like top tier sporting greats? Tiger Woods.
Yeah, Tiger Woods, Diego Maradona.
Yeah, Maradona.
Yeah.
Similar.
Yeah. Anyway, in 1935, around the same time that Babe Ruth was hanging up his cap for the final time, Major League Baseball was hit by another mental story. So Len Kerniker, he joined the Brooklyn Dodgers around that time. First season, he does pretty well. He gets 14 home runs. Second season's not so good, though. And the team are in St. Louis for a series, and it's broken to him that he's been dropped from the team. And he doesn't take it so well. He has a big row with the coach and basically decides he wants to go back to New York. He doesn't want to be there. And as a sort of gesture of goodwill, the team agree to pay for his flight back. But it's a bit of a long way. He's got a change in Detroit. So he gets onto the first flight and, feeling a bit sorry for himself, he necks a litre of whiskey. And a litre, yeah. And he gets a little bit unruly at this stage, starts harassing other passengers, hits a stewardess, to the point where they end up having to strap him into his seat with like belts. When the flight eventually arrives in Detroit, the stewardesses have to carry him unconscious off the flight, and they like dump him on a seat in the terminal. And he eventually comes to and is like, "Where the fuck am I?" And realizes that he's not back in New York yet. So he sees this pilot walking through the terminal in like the old leather jacket with a sheepskin collar and pilot goggles. and he like collars this bloke and is like, "Look, have you got a plane? Like, I just need to get back to New York." And it basically convinces this guy to fly him on his little twin engine plane back to New York. So they get on the plane, it's him, the pilot, and a friend of the pilot. And they take off, and after a while, Len starts to get pretty unruly again. He starts arguing with them. Eventually, he like clambers into the front and starts trying to grab the controls, basically trying to like hijack the plane. And the pilot is just, they try and restrain him, but he's not having it. And eventually, the pilot grabs a fire extinguisher, whacks him around the head with it.
Was that the only way to?
That's the only way to stop him from like hijacking the plane. But by this point, by the time the pilot's got back into his seat, he's completely lost track of where they are. So ends up having to do an emergency landing on a racetrack. And they come down on this racetrack, and these open the doors, and these like ravenous guard dogs start like trying to get into the plane. Eventually they manage to call them off, and some people from the racecourse come and like help them. They're just like, this like mental guy just like tried to hijack the plane, and they carry him out and discover that he's dead. So,
do you think it was the liters of whiskey, the like headshot with the fire extinguisher, or like, I don't know, stress maybe? Like, what do we think?
It was a combination. Yeah. So they end up getting arrested, the pilots. They get let off in the end.
Well, so they think they've murdered him.
Yeah, they think that they've murdered. I mean,
murdered a baseball legend.
In a way.
This plane just careers down on a racetrack, and there's a dead body inside.
Can you imagine if you were on the racetrack? First a plane lands, then you have to like call off the ravenous dogs. Finally the door like pops open. It's just like
dead body just drops out.
Dead body of a famous baseball pitcher. And the guy in the pilot goggles looking so shell-shocked, covered in blood.
You can see why their suspicions were aroused.
Yeah.
But, yeah, eventually it's ruled self-defense, which is
well, there are two of them,
There were two of them,
they could back each other up.
Yeah.
I think that's how it works, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean,
he must have been known as a pretty rowdy character.
Apparently he wasn't.
Really?
Yeah, which is a slightly sad element to the story, is that he wasn't even a big drinker. And
why do you drink a litre of
Sort of don't think you can do
sort
that
of a
without
binge drinker.
practice.
Yeah.
that's not your first go. Sure.
Yeah, maybe this was sort of when they're writing a nice obituary about him. Wasn't a big drinker really. Like,
Man of God.
yeah. So jumping forward a few years to the swinging 70s and the story of Doc Ellis, a pitcher. So in baseball, throwing a no-hitter is a pitcher's dream, I gather.
What is it?
So it's basically when you go a whole innings when the batting team fails to hit a single ball.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Well, it's, they can hit it, but like they don't get on base. So like it only counts as a hit if it like they actually get on base. If you like hit it and then someone catches it, it doesn't count as a hit.
Right. So basically, you concede. Not only do you concede no runs, you
can see anyone on
bases.
bases. Yeah. So like the golden thing is like if you pitch an entire no-hitter game where you don't let them get on base.
Presumably, most pitchers never.
No, it's like pretty rare.
Yeah, it's a pretty impossible feat.
Even rounders. Especially rounders.
But that was what the Pittsburgh Pirates pitcher Doc Ellis achieved in 1970. And there was only one thing that was slightly unusual about his achievement. He was high on LSD when he did it.
Sick.
So baseball has a pretty mental schedule. They have like these series where they're playing matches basically every day. So Doc had a rest day between two games and he decided to head to LA to unwind a little bit and get monumentally fucked basically. So on his way there, he dropped a tab of acid at the airport. And by the time he arrived at his friend's house in LA, he was already tripping his nut off. So when they answered the door and he was just like out of it. And they asked what was wrong with him, and he replied, "I'm high as a Georgia pine." So over the course of the rest of the day and night, he complemented that with copious amounts of booze and weed before eventually passing out. He then woke up and he thought it was still the same day, so did what you or I would do and dropped another tab of acid while he was still lying there. At this point, though, his friend's girlfriend burst into the room holding that day's newspaper. It was like, "Doc, you know you got a game today." And he like looks at the clock, which I presume at this point is like melting into the wall. And it's 2:00 and he's got a match in 4 hours in San Diego.
And he's in LA.
He's in LA. So somehow he manages to like gather all of his stuff together, get to the airport and jump on a flight to San Diego. And he makes it in time for the first pitch of the game. And I don't know, somehow nobody really clocks what state is in.
It's a very slow game, there's not a lot of action.
Yeah. If you're going to take acid for any sport.
Yeah. He apparently managed to pick up some amphetamines on the way.
That'll
he had a dealer who was in the front row of the stadium who managed to hand him some. But anyway, he ends up playing the game of his life. So he later recalls it. He says, "I can only remember bits and pieces of the game. I was psyched. I had a feeling of euphoria. I started having a crazy idea in the fourth inning that Richard Nixon was the home plate umpire. And at one point, I thought I was pitching a baseball to Jimi Hendrix, who to me was holding a guitar, swinging it over his head."
Love it.
So, yeah, I don't know if he played that consistently, though. So apparently some of them, he just belted the ball into the batter. Other pitches he just threw straight into the ground. He
thinks he's having the time of his life.
Yeah, he was like diving out of the way of balls that were nowhere near him.
That's really good.
But he ended up walking 8 batters, struck out another 6 for no hits. Whatever the hell that means.
It's good.
It's good. It's good, I gather. Which, you think after that you'd try it again the next week.
Yeah, just see,
like, maybe every game.
Yeah.
Like John Lennon, didn't he do acid every day for a year?
Yeah. Surely you're not really feeling it at that point.
Well, I think he's just going up and up.
It's just your constant state. He says, Doc Ellis says that he never did it again though. Which,
really?
What a coward.
To be fair, it does sound quite stressful.
Yeah. But also, flying while on acid sounds quite stressful. It's not the environment that you'd recommend.
No, it's not a sort of safe space.
Yeah.
Harm reduction people
set and setting. You think so he must be quite an experienced psychonaut.
Yeah.
To drop a tab before a flight. Can you imagine that? So first of all, you've got to jump on a plane, then you've got to play a fucking baseball game and pitch.
Yeah.
Just getting a lot of people perceiving you. I think there were a lot of people crumble under that pressure.
Yeah, even, I don't know, even doing it the day before a match is still
feels a bit right.
Yeah, most
brave.
people draw. I mean, a lot of people don't even want to take it sitting by a lake in a quiet glade.
Doc actually says that he never pitched a game sober.
Right, okay.
So I think possibly he had some issues. But yeah, he was on like booze, weed, cocaine, and speed a lot of the time.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah, there was a lot of speed going around, wasn't there?
Yeah, it was pretty rife in that area.
Pretty speedy.
We've got pretty speedy time.
We've got
another
a
story.
couple more stories on that. But wasn't sort of everyone on, it was like housewives were on fucking speed to clean the house and stuff.
Yeah.
Good for them.
Different time.
Yeah, it was just like popping anything they could give you. Good times. All right, well, you can't always rely on hallucinogenic drugs to spice up a game, particularly when you're trying to entice as many fans in as possible. But in 1974, the Cleveland Indians cooked up an ingenious plan to boost crowds for their match against the Texas Rangers, a 10-cent beer promotion.
Sick.
So they cut the price of beer to 10 cents, which is about, in today's money and in pounds, it's about 50p a beer.
Unreal.
So it's cheap. Usually it would have been 65 cents, which is about £3 in today's money. So it's a good deal. And there was no limit on how many beers you could buy. You could only buy 6 at one time. But as we'll see, that rule went quickly out the window. But it could just keep running for as soon as possible. So, good idea to bring in the punters. What the organisers probably hadn't counted on was the febrile atmosphere around the games.
How would you not predict a febrile atmosphere?
Well, so a week before, basically, the two sides had been playing in Texas, and they'd had a huge brawl during one of the matches, and the Rangers fans had pelted the Cleveland Indians players with food and drink. So it got...
So the logical next step was to, on the return game, just give them as much
make beer free.
cheap beer as possible. I love that it's the complete opposite of the Premier League's attitude of just like, you're not allowed to drink in view of the stand. Like,
because the Premier League vibe is like, can we dampen down the enthusiasm because people will get knifed?
Yeah.
Whereas like in baseball, it's just like, can we hype this up a little bit more because it's fucking dull.
Although I think maybe this incident taught them a lesson, as we'll see. So obviously after this brawl, everyone's like, that was pretty tense. Like, it's quite rare. What's going on? And a reporter asks the Texas Rangers manager, Billy Martin, he says, are you going to bring armor to Cleveland? Because you're going to get it from the fans. And he just replies, nah, they won't have enough fans there to worry about. So fanning the flames. And this really lights a fire under the Cleveland press. The newspapers, the local radio, they're all just really stoking this rivalry, telling people to get down there and give the Rangers hell. So the stage is set for a riot. Anyway, 6 days later, the game rolls around and the 10-cent promotion draws in double the number of expected fans. It's a sellout. There's 25,000 people there. Apparently, people are bringing their own containers to fill so they can really milk it. So, petrol canisters, apparently empty wine bottles, just anything so you can get more volume. I don't know how they price that, but anyway, I think they lose control of pricing quite quickly. Anyway, on the field, the Rangers take the lead and the crowd are getting increasingly rowdy. I'll read from the local press, a direct quote. A woman ran out onto the field, flashed her breasts, and then tried to kiss umpire Nestor Shylock, who was not in a kissing mood. Anyway, then there's...
Is he sometimes in a kissing mood?
Caught me on a bad day. Busy trying to get my 10-cent beers in. Anyway, then there's a home run, at which point a naked man sprints onto the field, slides in at second base and
kisses the umpire. Who's up for that?
The local press say probably getting dirt in places unsuitable for speculation. So, one inning later, a father and son pair run on the outfield and moon the fans in the bleachers. Really enjoy that one. Feels planned, that one. Anyway, the Rangers are in the lead and the Indians fans start getting pretty angry. They've had a few drinks by this point and they begin pelting them with firecrackers, hot dogs and empty drink canisters. They're also spitting at them. And the local paper says the clouds of firecracker and marijuana smoke further contributed to the unsettling mood. Apparently it's starting to get dark at this point. So initially it's the naked woman, father and son mooning. It's a bit OTT, but it's funny.
Now they're spitting.
Yeah, now they're spitting. It's getting dark. It's getting ominous. Also, to add to the problems, there have been huge queues for the beers all day, as you'd expect, and the organisers decide that they need to service the fans quicker, so they park their beer trucks on the edge of the stadium, and they allow fans to fill up their cups through the fences. So it's the paper
just
continues.
straight from the like pump.
Yeah, it says weaving hooting queues of people refilled via industrial spigot.
Yeah. All the lads sucking on the beer teat.
Yeah, if you brought your $25 beer bat, that is the moment.
Yeah, that is really doing well.
I'm not even sure they're even taking money off them at this point.
It's just seen as a public good. Just to
It's literally like something out of The Simpsons, like a Duff beer thing with like a huge hose, just hosing them down with beer. So much fun. Yeah, it does sound fun. Going into the final innings, the Indians have made a bit of a comeback and the scores are tied in the 9th. At which point a fan runs on the field and tries to steal a hat from one of the Rangers players. The Rangers player is really angry about this. He kicks him and then stumbles, and his teammates think that he's been like attacked and that's why he stumbled. So they all 25 of them run onto the field to protect him, and this sparks a massive pitch invasion. Back to the local paper. 200 intoxicated fans, some armed with knives, chains, and clubs fashioned from the stadium seats they'd torn apart, surged onto the field, and others hurled bottles from the stands. So there's 200 of them surrounding these 25 Rangers players.
With like improvised weapons.
Yeah, and it literally looks like they're about to be killed. The Indians manager says later he thought they were going to be killed, so he orders his own players to grab their bats and attack their own fans to protect their opponents. Apparently they're just like clouting people with their bats.
I mean, it's pretty convenient, that you have those bats very close to hand.
Yeah, given that your enemies have improvised bludgeons from the stadium
knives.
seats.
What are they doing?
I guess
Are they like sharpening them?
Yeah, maybe like
bits of wood.
And also like the bit, it's basically bits of wood in wooden seats.
Yeah.
Is that why we have plastic seats?
Probably, yeah.
Certainly contributed. Anyway, so the players basically get round their opponents and they sort of like the American retreat from Kabul, where like slowly retreat, like batting off the fans. Apparently they're all being like hit in the head and punched as they go. The umpire, who was not in a kissing mood already, he's left bleeding from his head and hand. And he calls the fans uncontrollable beasts and says, I've never seen anything like this except in a zoo.
I sort of think you'd get a very similar outcome if like you did that with beer at like the Millwall Stadium. Yeah. Like if you parked a big like Budweiser truck outside the Den, you're going to get probably a lynch mob.
Yeah, it's the point at which you're stopping the queuing by just feeding people through like the gaps in the railings, in the fences.
I actually went to a football match once where they were giving out free beer.
Really?
It was a Hertha Berlin match.
Was it like, unlimited?
You got a token. So I arrived quite late for the game, and the girl who was giving out tokens just gave me a stash of like 5. And it was actually quite funny because it was the last game of the season. They were if they won the match, they were going to get into the Champions League, and they were playing a team who were like already relegated, bottom of the table, giving out free beer. It was this like carnival atmosphere, and they just lost 2-1.
Did the fans then make fashion weapons out of seats? Bludgeons.
But the feeding beer through the fence thing, it kind of reminds me of, do you remember when Jamie Oliver went on that thing and he like banned like fast food in schools, and then all these like mums fed their kids through the school fences?
Like bags of nuggets fed through. Like they can't live off the food. So good. You're probably wondering, like, were there recriminations? Presumably, like, they were banned from serving beer in the stadium for a while, but actually a few weeks later they repeated the promotion without any trouble.
See, the FA could learn a bit of things.
This time it was 2 drinks per person.
Right, yeah, that's sensible.
Crucial.
Yeah.
No hose feeding straight to their
No
mouths.
beer troughs for the boys.
Troughs. There's something just very funny about a crowd gradually becoming more and more. It's also baseball, I guess, like cricket. It lasts all day.
Yeah, it's like a 4 or 5 hour
People
thing,
get really fucking drunk. So
but also that they sort of fostered it after. You could kind of see that things were beginning to go off track a little bit, and then they just drive the truck
comes
up
the
to
hose.
the fence. Or do you think it was like by this point, it's going to be more dangerous if we stop giving them
what they want. Apparently at the end, so obviously the players get back to the clubhouse, but then all the fans are like climbing on the roof of the clubhouse, like whacking the roof and stuff, trying to break in. I think then they had to like rescue them. They had to like send in police and vehicles. Oh yeah, sorry. When they repeated the promotion as well, they had 200 police officers on site. There were no police there though.
Right, yeah.
Again, not helping. Wasn't there another one like there's one where like, you know, in America in like the 70s, disco gets huge, and then there's like an anti-disco movement, possibly racist, probably, that's like rock fans. And there was a baseball, there was a double-header game. There were 2 matches on one day, and they called it like disco demolition. And in the interval between the 2 games, they said fans could bring disco records on the field and they would blow them up. Anyway, they did this like controlled explosion, but it was like way bigger than they planned. It just blew the entire pitch off. They couldn't play. It was like half the stadium was just blown off. I feel like a lot of The Simpsons comes from these eras of just wayward.
I think judging by the previous stories, baseball players weren't exactly buttoned up in the old days, but by the late 60s, things were getting pretty loose. So, you know, this was the era of free love, sexual liberation, hippies putting flowers in soldiers' rifles. And it wasn't long before this freewheeling spirit made its way into sport. So in 1969, the journeyman pitchers Mike Kekich and Fritz Peterson found themselves at the New York Yankees. And, you know, both of them had long careers in baseball. They both had kids, similar ages. Their wives, Marilyn and Suzanne, knew each other. And, you know, soon they became best of friends. They'd room together when they played away matches. You know, they'd go on family holidays together. And over a few years, they became really close, their families. So close, in fact, that they began falling in love with each other's wives. So in 1972, both of the couples are at this dinner party that's being hosted by a New York Post journalist. And, you know, they're getting on well as usual. You know, drinks are being had and, you know, everything's getting a bit loose. And eventually at sort of 2:00, the party breaks up and the journalist and his wife are clearing up the party, heading off to bed, and they look out the window and they see that the 2 couples are still in the driveway an hour later, just chin wagging away. And basically what transpires is that they've decided that they'd all be happier and better off with each other's partners. So the new couples, they leave together that night, and the following morning they meet up at a diner to iron out the sort of details of this arrangement. And they basically decide that, you know, it's not a swingers sort of thing. They're not just swapping wives, they're swapping lives. So Mike and Fritz are basically going to move into each other's houses. Their wives, their kids, their dogs, everything are going to stay put. So this swap takes place over the summer when they're not playing. And at the start of the next season, they call a press conference to announce this to the journalists that what's gone on. And, you know, they explain the whole arrangement. Everyone's pretty stunned. Naturally, it's a massive story, which for some reason they seem quite surprised about this. They kind of thought this would kind of fly under the radar.
And yet they held a press conference.
That's what I'm thinking. In a way, that's quite a way to deal with it, isn't it? Just get out in front of it.
Yeah, but I don't know if there'd been speculation about it. I'm not too sure. So Fritz Peterson and Suzanne, they stay together. They're
forever.
Happily married. Yeah, forever. Yeah. They get married. They have their own kids. Sadly, it doesn't work out quite so well for Mike and Marilyn. They split up pretty quickly. So I think
How quick are you talking?
I think like pretty shortly after the press conference.
So you got cucked.
Yeah. Apparently he was pretty fucked off about it.
I think you would be.
Yeah. You're like, hang on, I was drunk.
Yeah. Someone else has my life. Yeah. My dog.
Can I at least have the dog?
Yeah.
Well, and then you're just living on your own in a motel.
Yeah. So there was some talk a few years ago that Matt Damon and Ben Affleck were going to make a film about it.
What he did.
I don't know. Sadly, it didn't come to anything. But when that story came about, apparently people were trying to track down Mike Kekich. Apparently he was so mortified at the prospect of this film being made that he moved to New Mexico and adopted a new identity.
Is that because people kept calling him Mike Kekich?
That's really tough.
Yeah.
If you had to guess who suggested the idea in the first place,
It's not Mike.
It's not Mike. Can you imagine
I
also?
think it was definitely Fritz had just...
Yeah.
They probably started
wanted to
having an
fuck
affair, and it's just like, do you think we should maybe swap wives?
Sure, yeah. It's like, that was kind of just drunk talk.
Yeah.
No, I've written a plan.
Contract has been signed.
Can you imagine also though if you suggested that, like you're just like drinking with some friends and you're like, you know, like, maybe
Should we swap
it'd
wives?
be kind of cool if you, I don't know, if you fuck my wife. And everyone's just like, what? And you're like, yeah, no.
It's
It's a brave thing to bring up.
yeah.
Okay, I think so far a lot of the stories have had sort of like quite charming characters, even if they've been up to no good.
Sort of a lovable rogues quality.
Yeah, I mean, a few of them have been total wrong-uns,
Sure.
but none of them quite measure up to the 1986 New York Mets, who were described by the Daily Beast as a gang of drunks, pill poppers, barroom brawlers, degenerate gamblers, womanizers, and arrogant blowhards. Apart from that, they were lovely. There's actually a book about them because they won the World Series that year. It's by Jeff Pearlman. It's called The Bad Guys Won. And in it, he quotes pitcher Bobby Ojeda, who says, "We were a bunch of vile fuckers." Anyway, as I said, they get to the World Series in 1986, and there's this infamous flight back from Texas after they've reached the World. They've won the National League. And on this flight back, they're in high spirits. There's a food fight. It's all getting quite good fun. They're all absolutely smashed, at which point they start hoovering huge rails of coke in their seats. Players are walking around naked. Their wives are on board too, and they're getting stuck in. So apparently players are shagging their wives in the toilets. Players are shagging other players' wives in the toilets.
Good family members.
Yeah. Fritz Peterson was having the time of his life.
Mike Kekich is watching a film in the front row, headphones in.
Yeah, I will actually have something from the trolley.
Someone finally asked Mike what Mike wants. I will take a warm towel. You're going to need it, pal. Anyway, apparently also some of the wives were getting off with each other, the players said. So carnival atmosphere.
It's kind of like that scene from The Wolf of Wall Street where they're all being debauched.
That's exactly how I picture it.
Yeah.
Yeah, apparently actually some of the wives were puking in the seat pockets as well.
It's sort of less aesthetic part of it.
Yeah. Let's get back to the shagging. Let's get back to Mike on his own at the front watching a rom-com.
Marley and me just crying in the seat.
Yeah, it's the wine making me cry. Anyway, so this wild flight happens. They land in the end, and I think they're hit with something like $30,000 fine. It's just like carnage. Everyone hates them. But to be fair, this is small beer for them because apparently they arrived for every match hungover, and their solution was to get really fucking tweaked on speed pills. So by this point, speed pills are all the rage. They call them greenies. They're green. I guess a bluey is Viagra or Valium or something. I don't know. Anyway, the greenies. One of the players remembered, to pop a greenie was to plug yourself into an electrical outlet. The charge was immediate, and just 2 or 3 tablets lasted 9 innings. Very poetic for a bunch of low-life drug addict.
Matches the experience that most people have on Adderall. Nice performance in
does it?
really. Yeah.
Anyway, so they're all completely hooked on speed, and when they finally win the World Series, it's a proud moment. They're a bunch of bastards, but anyone can appreciate their achievement. And there's this huge parade down Broadway. It's like all of Manhattan's taken over with this celebration, and all the players are there. The proud families. There's only one of them missing. That's Dwight Gooden. He skips the victory parade because he's in the projects on Long Island scoring some more speed. And he says he watches it on his drug dealer's TV. So bleak. So bleak. To be fair, people wonder how that rabble won the World Series, but it's not like they were up against a team of ruthless pros. So their opponents, the Red Sox, were mainly relying on star pitcher Oil Can Boyd. His real name's Dennis, but he drank so much. Apparently, where he was from in the South, they call a beer can an oil can. So he became known as Oil Can Boyd. And he'd always been a massive boozer, but that spring in 1986 in training, he got introduced to crack cocaine and he kicked it up a notch. So he said every single day of that season, he honked on his crack pipe, often smoking right before taking to the field to pitch.
When did they have drug tests in baseball? Because it feels 1986. They should have had it.
But are they mainly just looking for performance enhancers? Is crack a performance enhancer if you're a pitcher? I've never smoked crack, but.
Or pitched.
Or pitched. Yeah. But I've played rounders. But what you hear is that it gives you obviously this very short, intense burst of energy. So for pitching, I can imagine it giving you an extra 5%.
Well, also I think it's probably just like the next logical step from amphetamines is you want like more juice. Yeah. The greenies aren't hitting anymore.
That's probably the case, isn't it? You've got to kick it up a notch. But I mean, the boozing, that's just lifestyle. I'm not convinced he was using crack as a performance enhancer. I think he was addicted to crack. Anyway, they get to that World Series, obviously, against the Mets, and ahead of the decider, Game 7, they're really relying on Oil Can Boyd. They go into the clubhouse and they find him passed out, absolutely hammered. He can't play. So they just lock him in an office and play without him. And he misses that game, and of course they lose to the Mets. Perhaps that's why. Apparently he was known for his, quote, intense charisma.
Wonder where he got that from.
It sounds like crack. Apparently he also used to shout at his glove, which again...
Probably the crack.
Finally, the following spring, the police do actually catch up with him and arrest him, but it's not for his crack use. So after all that crack smoking and everything, you think it would be for some major drug crime, but actually the police rock up at his place because he's racked up $367 in unpaid Blockbuster fines for failing to return 5 videotapes.
That's like Al Capone getting done for tax fraud, isn't it?
They finally got the crack smoking picture. And actually, the videos, perhaps inevitably, turn out to be porn films. So they released in the press a list of the titles of them. I've got a few of them here. Nudes in Limbo, Sex, etc., and Fists of Fury, which feels a bit more hardcore than the others. Yeah, I guess that's about as hardcore as porn gets, isn't it?
Oh, especially on
Blockbuster.
VHS.
Yeah, cassette. They were cassettes.
Yeah. Is that just cassette's not just audio?
No, VHS is a video cassette.
All right.
Did you ever encounter video cassette?
VHS, yeah. I was down Blockbuster getting my copy of Fists of Fury.
Fists of Fury.
Police will rock you up to enforce a Blockbuster fine.
Yeah, but not
it's quite as
crack on the
heavy-handed.
Yeah. Although in this next story, the police are a little bit more heavy-handed. The job of a mascot is to provide a bit of pre-match cheer, wave to the kids, pose with an old season ticket holder before the game. It absolutely does not include introducing the players to cocaine, applying them with so much gear they all get hooked and the FBI have to intervene. But that is what the Pittsburgh Parrot got up to in 1985. So around the time that the New York Mets are popping their greenies and Oil Can Boyd is getting so cracked out that he's wanking himself dry over sex, etc. Kevin Koch, the Pittsburgh Parrot, he's starting to get really into his cocaine. He'd worked for the Pittsburgh Pirates for 6 years, and you grow close to the players. He'd really become one of the lads by this point, and he was partying with them all the time, and they were all doing a lot of coke. I mean, it's the 80s.
Yeah. Who wasn't?
Yeah. I was reading, I can't remember another player describing coke from the time, and he was like, every party I would arrive, someone would shake my hand, and in the handshake they would hand me an 8-ball. What is an 8-ball? Like 8 grams of coke.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. It's a lot. Yeah, that's every time someone greets you. Apparently coke was everywhere. So 21 of the 43 players on the Pirates roster were hooked on coke, and they were all getting it from this childhood friend of of the Pittsburgh Parrot. So the Parrot's got his beak in.
I thought the Parrot was dealing.
His best friend is dealing for them.
Right.
So the Parrot is dealing, but it's his friend who's supplying him with the coke, and he's supplying it to the players.
I imagine he's like keeping baggies in like the Parrot costume.
Yeah, he's got dusty wings, let's say. Yeah, I think between feathers you could slide him quite cautiously. Yeah. Apparently it's like literally players are sneaking off mid-game to meet the Parrot in the bathroom stalls and pick up drugs from him. Like, it's proper.
I love that. It's like they come off and they're like high-fiving the mascot. And everyone's like, oh, that's so sweet.
Do you know that like drug dealer handshake people do, where it's kind of a handshake? You're doing that with a big wing. Be more subtle, man. Come on. Just falls out the beak.
I wonder if Gunnosaurus has ever dabbled in these sort of things.
Maybe that's why they sacked him, for real reason. That's why Mesut Ozil kept him on the payroll. Needless to say, the feds eventually catch up with him because they start realising that there's all this cocaine use going on in sport, and they trace it back to the Parrot. And they sort of haul him in. You better start squawking. And actually, the parrot does fucking squawk. He dobs his childhood friend in, and the bloke gets 12 years in jail.
The parrot get nothing?
The parrot gets off because he turns state witness. He sings like a canary.
Feels like a betrayal of the sort of mascot code of honor.
Yeah, he does get sacked.
Fine, yeah.
But actually, it kicks off a controversial era for the parrot role. So his replacement is arrested for skinny dipping.
Is that a crime?
Yeah, in certain states. In Pennsylvania.
Are you just not allowed to take off the costume? Is that why?
Yeah, it's not the nudity, it's the fact that you let the costume...
Broken the fourth wall.
And now the kids are scared.
Didn't we do a story before? It's like it's considered like a great shame in the mascot world if you're seen without your head on. So skinny dipping is a federal offence.
Do you think he kept the head on?
It's just cock out.
And actually, the guy who then succeeded that guy as the parrot was arrested because he was caught trying to buy a gun using a gun license registered in the name Pittsburgh Parrot, complete with a picture of him in the costume. Just picturing the guy looking at the gun license like next to his face.
Yeah, that is you.
Yeah. There you go. It's just something about that parrot suit brings out the worst in people.
I reckon in Texas they'd let you get away with that. Maybe not in Pittsburgh.
What, having a gun license of a comedy parrot? I feel like the parrot and the childhood friend slightly got a raw deal there. Like, the players are all taking coke and those guys are just helping them get it.
Yeah, they would have got it from someone else.
Yeah, just dealing to mates.
Is that a crime now?
Yeah,
Yeah, it is.
Forgot about that. All right, we're nearly at the end, but I thought I'd finish with quite a charming recollection from the era. This is back in 1971, so really the peak of baseball's seedy century. You know, this is around the time that Doc Ellis is on his fourth acid tab of the innings, and Mike Kekich is sitting in his cuck chair watching his wife and his best friend making love. And meanwhile, Mickey Mantle, a former New York Yankees star, is being asked for his memories, his finest memories of life with the team. And he was handed this form to fill out. They gave it to all the players. It's just a couple of questions. So question one, I consider the following my most outstanding experience at Yankee Stadium. And Mickey wrote, I got a blowjob under the right field bleachers by the Yankee bullpen. Next question. This event occurred on or about, brackets, give as much detail as you can. He certainly gives detail. Says, it was about the third or fourth inning. I pulled a groin and couldn't fuck at the time. She was a very nice girl and asked me what to do with the cum after I came in her mouth. I said, don't ask me, I'm no cocksucker. Signed, Mickey Mantle, the all-American boy.
That's such a good line.
Charming. Yeah, don't know what there is to say about Mickey Mantle.
Is that up in the New York Yankees museum somewhere?
That's a bit of memorabilia.
Alongside Babe Ruth's like story about being hunted out of a hotel.
Yeah,
there's like a commemorative bat, and then that.
Well, they have a Hard Rock Cafe inside Yankee Stadium, so it feels like whatever receptacle she spat it in could sit right in.
With the memorabilia.
With
Jimi Hendrix's guitar.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what you need, one of those plastic $25 baseball bats.
Wow,
as she was looking into Mickey Mantle, he then gave up drinking, turned really religious, and retired to a small community.
Yeah, it's kind of the way it goes sometimes.
Yeah,
isn't it?
it's either that way or the other way.
Yeah. Seedy way.
Yeah. That's all we got time for. I mean, there were some other stories which we've held back because they come from a later era, the naughty 90s, we'll call it. So it'd be nice to have you back on
Definitely,
for that, Josh.
yeah, happy to be.
The sequel. So we can eke out a bit more content from these guys' lives.
Horrible men.
Yeah, from these horrible men's lives. Who was the most horrible character? Biggest wrong'un and biggest, what's the other end of the spectrum? Charmer.
Well, I think not Charmer, but like the victim in all this is old Mike. I think he hasn't really done anything wrong. He's not wrong and he doesn't seem particularly malign. I mean, well, he maybe tried something.
It'd be funny if it was his idea.
Yeah.
His wife was just like, well, fuck you, Mike. So you're going with Mike as your favourite.
Well, just the...
Who's your all-American boy and who's your all-American wrong'un? So boy is the nice guy.
Yeah, I think Mike has to be Mike for that.
Mike Cuckage.
I would say possibly whoever it was that had the idea to roll the beer truck up to the fence and pump the hose through.
Fire up the spigot.
Yeah. The industrial beer taps. Yeah, that's...
It's the hero of the episode.
Okay, so you're going with them as your hero. Who's your villain? Who's your wrong'un?
Probably... I mean, I actually think... I didn't know that how seedy Babe Ruth was.
Yeah, he's the biggest scumbag.
Yeah, I would say that's a real, like the getting chased down a train carriage by a mistress, it's pretty bad. And I think, there was a more strict sense of morality in the 1930s. There's probably more scandalous then.
There sort of was and there wasn't, because there was more of that shit.
Well, there's like the pretense of like very respectable shit, but then like these sort of slapstick capers always happening. It feels a bit more innocent.
Yeah, it does. What, so he's your villain or your hero? Where's your moral compass at?
Yeah, it's hard to say. I think he's the biggest scumbag.
Yeah. Zach? Who's your scumbag?
I would say possibly Fritz Peterson for convincing his best mate to take his wife.
The master plan.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to go my biggest hero. I quite like Doc Ellis. It's harmless.
Yeah.
And what a game he threw. So I'll go with Doc. Is it
the
Doc?
idea of him like thinking he's nailing it, but just like chucking balls into the ground.
Yeah. Did he throw a no-hitter? Will we ever know? And then villain, it's hard to look past Babe Ruth. But I'm also not a massive fan of the coppers who banged up the crack smoker just for having some late blockbuster tapes. Possible hero. Oh yeah, sorry, the FBI for
doing the power.
Yeah, the FBI's done worse. J. Edgar Hoover's got more to answer for than banging up a coke dealing parrot. But I'm going to go with the feds for that. Yeah. All right.
Nice one.
I think that's all we've got time for. If you are a baseball fan, sorry for starting the episode by just insulting you, really, British or otherwise.
Well, I think the British ones do deserve insulting.
Yeah, you fucking nonsense. Thanks a lot, Josh. We enjoyed that a lot.
Happy to be here.
Thanks, and thanks, Zach.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot for listening.